Hi, good afternoon. My name is David Doucette, and I'm here to speak about master data management for retail banking. I'm going to do a presentation which is really geared at how master data management can be used in the banking environment and the benefits. And it's not going to be highly technical, but it kind of a roadmap of where to start and how to proceed, and hopefully some examples of some use cases that will resonate. So I guess I'll start out first by just talking a little bit about who Lighthouse is and what we do. We're a regional consulting company. We're part of a larger corporation called Converge Technology Solutions. But Lighthouse is located in Lincoln, Rhode Island, with offices in New York City and Ontario. And in addition, Converge is a national company, a North American company with offices throughout the US and in Canada. We have about 200 consultants, been working in the IT industry for 23 years, founded in 95, very stable company, lots of expertise, and really client-focused. Just in terms of our customers, over 75% of our customers that we started with 20 years ago still are customers of our company. Lots of them have long-term relationships, and we do a lot of repeat engagements. We're happy to say that we're really 100% committed to our customer success and are focused on that really at all costs. We want to make sure we deliver value to our clients, and that's our primary commitment to them. In terms of what we do, we're going to be focusing on the far right column here, the analytics, but the company has deep experience in security, hybrid cloud, and analytics, which master data management is just one component and that we're going to talk about today, but we do extensive work in business intelligence, predictive data integration, and governance, which is really part of master data management is a part of that, data warehousing and geospatial and location intelligence. So our goal is to become the go-to partner for software and hardware purchases in the security, hybrid cloud, analytics, and infrastructure domains, and really to do that by adding value. In terms of master data management for retail banking, one of the things that we've been really focused on is sort of what industries and what domains have a specific benefit in MDM that possibly they have not been able to approach given technology of the past. And I think overall, MDM has sort of gotten a reputation for being, in many cases, difficult to implement and long-term cycles and expensive. And so typically in banking, you would see MDM in some of the very large banks. But as you get down to regional and community and, that type of banking structure, less and less of that. And what we're seeing in today's marketplace is that a lot of the community banks are merging to become super community banks or state banks or regional banks. And with the acquisitions, with the mergers, with the change in footprint, the need to really understand who their customers are and how they are maybe interacting with the different financial services operations throughout the branch network, including acquisitions, is really something that many banks are struggling to get their hands around, their arms around, I should say. And in addition, even for banks that are just local, there's different relationships that banks will have with different consumers, whether it be as a business owner, as an individual depositor, as a credit card holder, and sometimes those systems can be varied within the banks, and to have a sense of who is who and what products that they might utilize is sometimes a little bit more difficult to get, like I said, their arms around than you might imagine. So we feel that MDM, and especially the new MDM Express from IBM, is a great offer for our clients. But this presentation is not really going to be specifically about that. It's going to be more MDM as a capability, as opposed to as a specific product from any specific vendor. So the idea of MDM, we're going to talk about strategy and blueprint, business value, critical success factors, what single view in retail banking might look like, talk about the reference architecture, implementation approaches, and some customer success stories. There is really around how do we enable MDM for banking without the added cost of a large implementation. So let's look at what the capabilities are and what we're trying to do within MDM in banking. And so the first thing, master data management, what we want to do is make sure we capture the data one time. We store it in a way that guarantees that the data is in a single place of reference, and it's made available to those who need it, wherever they are, both internally and externally. When we talk about MDM, there are various domains, and in this particular case, I'm going to specifically talk about customer, but obviously product and location and employee are all viable and important aspects. In banking, I think customer and product, which resources that the bank offers that our customers take advantage of, and which other ones could they, become the real key to success. So in terms of why a bank would want to implement a master data management strategy, among those things that are important to customers, in addition to marketing capabilities, is regulatory and compliance functions. So know your client is a regulation or capability that is required to make sure that people are getting accounts for the real person, right? So there's a lot of examples today of people who are under false pretenses applying for relationships within a bank with false identification, false information, and being able to handle that kind of thing, and knowing what relationships you already have are key. Anti-money laundering, and as part of the Patriot Act, knowing who is who is important. The second aspect is knowing that the data is centralized and cleansed and is of high quality, so that policies and procedures can be put in place. And with all the various silos of information, maybe the enterprise data warehouse, the CRM, the collection systems, any other systems, to make sure that there's common information across all of those platforms. And then linking that information to the products that are available, whether they be mortgages or home equity lines of credit, credit cards, capital market data, foreign exchange, treasury, etc. So there's, and then also a lot of banks today offer either their own insurance or in conjunction with some affiliate insurance for life, homeowner, annuities, etc. And so knowing that this specific customer has this type of relationship, maybe they just bought a house, so we want to potentially upsell them a homeowner's policy or whatever the case may be, would be very valuable. And the difficulty can be if you don't have a strong sense that multiple records within the organization are actually the same person, then that can lead to missed opportunity. In terms of business value or the drivers behind master data management, it's really the cost optimization and efficiency. So how do we lower cost and make ourselves as efficient as possible? How do we manage compliance and risk? So we want to make sure if we know that a customer is highly leveraged on a mortgage, and if that person applies for some other type of credit, that we're actually looking at the same customer information and not two separate records that potentially could lead us to grant extra credit that may not be justified. So compliance and risk management, increasing reporting accuracy. So again, it all comes down to we always say, you know, garbage in, garbage out. So the quality of the data and its consistency leads to reporting accuracy, usability, and sharing. And I think the most important is to establish the authoritative source of information. So when people do reporting and they are getting the information that is mastered and secured and governed, then we know that the information that we are reporting on is actionable and is trusted. And I think that's a very key component. So business drivers plus mastering the data gets you to some enterprise benefits, including cross-selling and upselling capabilities, reducing time to market. You know, I talked a little bit about access to improved credit market and liquidity risk management. That's a very big deal in banks. Better decision making overall and operational efficiencies. Just moving on to kind of the culture around the data and the sort of the mindset. Oftentimes we go into clients and we talk about the business value of MDM and they, you know, what problems it can solve, and sometimes there's just no recollection or not recollection, no recognition is the word I was looking for, of the value. What problems we hear, you know, and so it's one of those things of the forest through the trees. If you don't realize you have a problem, then it's very hard to deal with it. So sometimes, you know, we have a situation. Yeah, we know we have data silos, but we're just not sure what to do about it. And other situations we get into, customers are like, yeah, we deal with a lot of spreadsheets and we manage to get by. Where we start to get some traction is we're doing some things in our, you know, our loan portfolio or our investment portfolio, but we're not, you know, we don't have an integrated approach. And ideally, we want to get a client to the point where they understand that they have a real opportunity, and we can give them a unifying vision that enterprise MDM is a good program and that it will lead to significant benefits. And the ultimate goal is to get our clients to understand that data is the way things are done. I mean, and to make it an integral part of the day-to-day operations and have it be a continuing learning and improving capability that they can, you know, bet the business on. When you do have a good MDM strategy, mature companies have better performance across the whole life cycle. Gartner indicates a 20% increase in efficiency and improvement across operations, finance, customer data management with quality MDM in place. And the best part of it is once you have a platform and an architecture in place, then it makes it really easy to integrate third-party data and analytics. So even bringing in new systems and new capabilities can be, with a good architecture and a good platform, it's very easy to integrate new things, including new acquisitions, new sets of customers, or new portfolio products within the existing bank. Some of the benefits of a single customer view. So one of them is address compliance to meet reporting from edicts such as Sarbanes-Oxley and Basel, as well as consumer privacy. creating data consistency and enhancing data accuracy. Very important and sometimes overlooked in different institutions. Controlling costs and reducing risks is something that it's hard to quantify sometimes, but obviously MDM gives you the ability to make sure you deduplicate data. And when it comes to particularly marketing campaigns is one example of where we see the benefits. When you're contacting people multiple times because you have multiple records, it can detract from the effectiveness. If somebody gets 3 flyers in the mail on the same day, they sort of feel like it's completely junk mail, and might not pay the attention to it that it deserves. Not to mention the cost of production and mailing and everything else. Same thing with statements, statement generation. When you might be sending 3 statements, because not the same statement potentially, but 3 different statements for one relationship that should be consolidated into one. All of those things help control costs and reduce risk. In addition to that, if somebody moves and you have one version of the customer, then one change of address changes sort of everything, and that has its real value. From a new revenue capability, it's imagine the call center within the bank. So when you have a good MDM reference architecture and somebody calls for a service, it gives you and the call center staff a very nice opportunity to cross-sell and upsell and improve the customer experience, because you have a full view of exactly who the customer is and what their relationships are within the bank. So that goes right to the customer service as well. I point out a few others: customer identification, so we know exactly that we have the right person, and the single customer view enables better business analytics in general. So when you're doing things like predictive analytics, prescriptive analytics, or even just reporting, having quality, consistent data in an MDM platform makes for much better reporting and better results in terms of predicting outcomes. When you look at doing predictive analytics, looking at the population and the tendencies and the behaviors of clients, and trying to then take that sample set and forecast it over the entire population is much more accurate when the core data that you're analyzing is accurate. So if I have myself within the bank as 3 different people, and I should be viewing that as one, when I start making predictions and use that as a guide, it's going to very much skew the numbers and the accuracy of the predictions. So that's another big benefit of MDM single customer view. In terms of a blueprint, and I just have this because I know people are going to have the opportunity to have copies of the deck. We view the blueprint for MDM as a kind of a 6-step process. One is first making the case for MDM. Why do you need MDM? And that goes back to the original slide that I showed about, problem, what problem? So the first step is sort of making the case for MDM. And at Lighthouse, I think we have a very deep expertise in the people that work with me and on my team have been doing this for a very long time. And once the case is made for MDM, we can really help along this journey. So preparing for MDM, we have consultants and experts that will come in and help you understand the different kinds of capabilities and the different implementation methods and strategies that can be used. But the first thing you have to do is what are the business drivers? What what are the different MDM methods of use, and how ready is the organization for MDM, and the importance of governance to MDM, and what kind of value can be expected out of the project. And then to make sure that we define what is the different data types within the organization, what needs to be mastered, and what is just reference data. What domains do we want to master? Is it just customer? Is it customer product? Is it, and then how, if it is multi-domain, how are we going to implement a multi-MDM strategy, and what capabilities do we expect? And then to define a reference architecture for the MDM implementation, the system of entry, record, and reference, and look at architectural principles and guidelines with the goal of making it easy to implement, highly available, highly scalable, and highly adaptable to changes in terms of, again, new data sources, new capabilities. And then there's a sort of a strategic roadmap that we have here in terms of ways to roll it out. And if you're looking for outside help, we would even help develop an RFP where you could actually go out and solicit. Obviously, we always love to do it ourselves, but sometimes we're just asked to provide an advisory role. And so again, a roadmap, and then finally the ongoing care and maintenance of the MDM system, the governance, taking care of new data sources, and change requests. In terms of, again, the business objectives for the financial institution, it's really around increasing customer profitability, so getting more wallet share from your customer through cross-selling and upselling opportunities. Other benefits, though, provide an audit trail for regulators, for the bank, for the stakeholders that have concerns and or responsibilities around compliance and or audit. Also, risk management and regulatory compliance, as I mentioned, but risk management, a huge factor for banking to minimize risk while maximizing profitability, and wallet share is hugely valuable. And obviously, one other is for lead generation and prospecting. In terms of sort of the pyramid, what we would view the pyramid of use cases and success criteria. So having a solid platform, having a strategy for identity resolution and know your customer leads to increased profitability, reduced manual work, and improved operational efficiency. And the single customer view improves visibility to relationship history. And that's the key. The key is to get to the cross-sell, upsell by identifying various opportunities in the propensity to buy and patterns that may establish or show themselves from various customers that can be applied to others that will lead to strong opportunity. And so here's an example of what single view of a retail banking customer might look like, and how it would manifest itself. So this is on the slide here. We have 4 different versions of Tom B, Tom Bridges, and different information in terms of net worth, annual income, where he went to school, maybe different email addresses. And so with the 360 view and through cleansing and deduplication, we then come up with the golden record or the master record, which is sort of a combination of all of the others and a superset of all the information. So that's a visual example of how that would work. But I put on the slide some notes around so we take transaction data focus versus customer data. So different transactions that may occur within the bank may have snippets of all the different pieces of some of this information. But when we can tie it back to a single entity and know that this is in fact the same person, it provides a lot of value. How this happens is not magic. There are rules for names, rules for modeling and entity processing, and how to handle errors. So when a customer record is trying to be matched up to the MDM system, if it can do it automatically, which is hopefully the goal 99% of the time, then it happens. But there are cases where there's a lack of standard and there are processing errors, and then that record might have to get kicked out and be viewed by somebody whose responsibility it is to sort of audit that record error and determine how best to fix it and incorporate it into the whole environment. So that involves strategies around ownership of who owns the data and who's responsible for its accuracy outside of the actual MDM system, and what sources of data are we maintaining and working through within the MDM hub, if you will. So what are the customer data quality impacts? Again, we've talked to some of it. Helps with risk, credit risk, market risk, exposure for fraud and things of that nature, anti-money laundering. And so, and the best part of it, I think, is it helps reduce, customer dissatisfaction. The flip side is enhancing customer satisfaction so that they feel a real connection to the bank. And I think today, when banks compete on just one playing field, which is just maybe product offerings, it's very hard to differentiate yourself from a lot of the other banks, because so many with technology today, so much is offered at every bank. And so how do you become the bank that is going to be the go-to bank for the community, and basically you set yourself apart with service and personalization, and there's no better way to do that with a solid MDM platform. So the benefits, again, reduced operational costs, better customer experience, unified view of the customer, relationships, and contextual analysis. So what kind of relationship do we have with that bank and with that consumer, and how can we improve it, and elevated customer service opportunities to help increase revenue. In terms of Lighthouse's master data management implementation approach, I'm not going to walk through just in the consideration of time. I'll just touch upon pieces of this, and obviously have it available to you for. But what is the current state of the organization in terms of data quality, in terms of processes? What is the desired state? And this is all happening in the discovery phase of before any kind of actual work is getting done with any kind of products or technology. Assessment of the data elements: how critical are they? What quality are they already? And what is the complexity of implementation? And so certain things come out. For example, within banking, you'll have deposit accounts that might have multiple names on them. And how do we handle that type of entity resolution? Do we master two different names? How are we handling that? Particularly, with spouses or a parent and child, sometimes the relationship is and, sometimes the relationship is or. So either one has access to the funds. Sometimes they both have to be present or available to access the funds. When it might be related to things like trusts or other legal relationships that might still be me in terms of my account, but it might be in trust of, and so how do we handle things of that nature? So all of the, or it might be my business. So if I have a business and I have an account at the bank, do we view that and that relationship with regard to the business as part of my overall MDM relationship as a customer? So data elements, sites, and sources kind of get a sense of the candidates and then produce a roadmap, a definition. And then once we go through that, it's architecture and data modeling. And as I say, there's you know, in any technology implementation, there's a roadmap that once followed and once a pattern can be established, then the road to success is more assured. So MDM architecture, data governance, and technology implementations are all aspects that have to be considered in the MDM journey. In terms of the reference architecture that we see in MDM, you know, there are 7 layers: lifecycle management, data persistence, data services, data integration, data quality, and data sources. And what I've done is sort of you know, listed the components of each of those layers and things that have to be considered when you implement MDM and look at it in this context. So you know, a simple example here obviously is the internal and external sources. What are they? But you know, overall, this really is here as a guideline for you for what things to consider within each layer. Again, master data, metadata, reference data, and audit. How do we want to keep track of who's doing what to our data? All of these kinds of things: security and transformation and visualization, ETL. All of these things are components of a sound master data management strategy, and wanted to make that available to you for your reference. So here's an example of a transactional systems in a customer reference architecture around retail banking. Different data sources, transactions into the MDM hub, and then how it would impact all the different consumers or constituents of that data. So data warehousing, portals, agency management, data stewards, ATMs, other. It's really a comprehensive overreaching capability that impacts all aspects of the institution. And you know, as I said in the opening, in the early days, the ability to implement MDM was a very time-consuming, lengthy process, and just the technology itself was very expensive. And today, with products like MDM Express from IBM, it's purpose-built, it's more affordable, and it's easier to implement at pricing and time frames that smaller regional and community banking institutions can afford. In terms of omnichannels in retail banking, so again, the improving onboarding of customers, improving satisfaction, improving campaign performance are all aspects of the sort of, in some of these cases, it can be the web interfaces, the walking into the branches, the banking centers where people might come in for other things besides just depositing and withdrawing and cashing checks and things of that nature. Market effectiveness, transparency, loyalty, and rewards is another thing that we're seeing within our banking customers, that they're starting to want to track the use of things like ATM debit cards in the maybe even community businesses, and offer loyalty and rewards programs so that there is a incentive to use that as a method of paying, and it also ties it into the other local businesses to get not only additional revenue but additional loyalty through sort of some type of a rewards program. And again, we talked about personalization and cross-selling through enhanced data collection. So the whole goal is to deliver orchestrated creation, delivery, and optimization of personalized, content-rich digital and non-digital experiences anytime, anywhere, to delight customers. That's how we view it. The whole goal is the customer focus and delivering better information to the bank so that we can then treat the customers with a whole new level of personalization. An example, a client example. So in the banking industry, implementing MDM and business stewardship, 80 years in business, full service bank, complete range of financial planning and investments. So the challenge was a limited access to all customers' data and accounts due to multiple legacy systems. I think we can all understand and appreciate that this is a common problem in business today, is legacy systems, multiple databases, data kind of everywhere. And even for those companies and institutions that have done a good job, the onslaught of data coming from everywhere today is just hard to get your head around, and certainly very difficult to maintain. So need to streamline maintenance and contact center costs, and delays in accessing client information negatively impacting satisfaction. So when I don't know about you folks, but when I get on the phone and I call my bank and they say, "Can you hold, please?" And if I'm waiting for 10 minutes and when they come back, they still don't seem to, quote unquote, get it, that can be frustrating. So the solution is employ MDM to implement single customer view and give them access to real-time customer information. Lots of deduplicating, and here's the cool thing is once the data is deduplicated, then not only is it quality improved and its accuracy improved and your cost reduced, but you can then start looking at enhancing data with customer information that's now maybe third party, or you can start looking really at location information. Where is the customer in the world? How far are they driving to the bank? When they're at work, when they're in the office, when they're, so all these type of things become unlocked with a single customer view. And the bank can target specific offers to businesses and consumers based on their overall relationship understanding of that person or that entity. Improved customer data accuracy went from 50 to 96%. IT support staff was reduced by 50% and deployed in more revenue generating areas. So it's not a matter of eliminating staff, it's a matter of refocusing and not having to have people spend time on redundant and not real value-added endeavors. Eliminating multiple client logins in some cases was achieved, and providing instant access to new accounts. So you could sign up for an account instantaneously instead of waiting sometimes up to 48 hours to be approved. One simple example that I pulled out from one of our clients is we were talking about how understanding who is who, and it's not that they treat people differently per se, but a business owner who has potentially millions of dollars in value in relationship with the bank might get a little bit different treatment if they overdraft on their personal account once in terms of waiving that fee, or maybe twice. So maybe the rule is that you always waive it for accounts once to give them a break if they make a mistake. But somebody who has a very valuable relationship with the bank and who's providing value in other areas, when that overdraft occurs the second or the third time, how important is it to collect that $35 or whatever the fee is, as compared to preserving the relationship and having them walk away going, that's why I do business in my company with that bank. Look how they treat people. And I think those are the kind of benefits that you get out of implementation of a strong MDM, because now there's no doubt of who that person is and what their value is to the company. And finally, in a case of anti-money laundering, so this is a compliance area, and we have a customer that provides a full range of financial services, from credit cards to personal loans and consumer banking. And the idea was to improve investigator efficiency. And really, in the case of anti-money laundering, when you have systems in place, it makes you less of a target for investigation, even because the investigators or the people who would be auditing you for these kinds of issues are less likely to be as concerned if they know that you have systems in place. And so the idea is to minimize unnecessary alerts. So instead of being warned of potential issues, we can cut that down and reduce the cost of investigating false positive alerts. The bank deployed entity resolution and comprehensive view of each individual and entity across its portfolio. Resolving nicknames and other name variants is a very key component of data quality in MDM, so that being able to figure out those kinds of subtleties, as I alluded to earlier, is very important. And consolidating alerts across individuals so that investigators receive at most one alert per entity. It just cuts down on the whole workload. The benefits was $10 million a year in cost avoidance and unnecessary investigations, 58% fewer false positives, and effective and efficient investigations, ensuring that the bank is compliant. And because of that, again, it's like somebody who has a good software access management strategy within their organization. If you have a good software access management strategy, then the software vendors that are selling you software are less likely to audit you around whether or not you're compliant on your software utilization. It's the same thing with the banks. So the better they have systems in place, the less chances they have of being audited or investigated, or at least less frequently. And when they have better audit logs, better tracking, better capabilities to ensure that they're compliant. That is what I have. I appreciate your attendance and your. If there's anything that we can do, contact information is available through the portal, and more than happy to help. Thank you, and have a good day. All right, so that kind of concludes the PowerPoint part of the demonstration. And what I'd like to do now is turn it over to Jason Matthew from IBM, so he can give you a live demo of the product, and then we'll follow it up with Q&A. So thank you. Jason, all yours.
Thank you so much, Dave, and thank you for making time for our demonstration today. My name is Jason Matthew, and I work on the offering management or product management team here at IBM. And on behalf of my team, we are very proud to present to all of you IBM Master Data Management Express. So Dave went through a really rich presentation just now on why mastering data is so important for retail banks. And we at IBM have recognized the exact same. When we as a team came together just over a year and a half ago, we asked ourselves, what are the major challenges that organizations are facing from an MDM perspective? How can we help them adjust those challenges? How can we make mastering data easy, right? Easier, not only for retail banks, but for any organization or across any vertical. But when we thought about retail banks in particular, we saw a great opportunity to say that mastering data in the banking, from a banking perspective, has always traditionally been more challenging for whatever reason. So that's why we went ahead and saw the benefits of creating a lightweight, quick-to-deploy product such as IBM MDM Express, so that retail banks in particular can really get an MDM up and running and not have to worry about the deep technical knowledge and know-how and also a lot of the baggage that comes with some really big enterprise MDM products. So today I'm going to walk you through a demonstration of MDM Express. We won't be taking a lot of time, but just enough time to show you just how quick and easy it is and just how powerful it can be for you and your organization when it comes to getting a single customer view to really knowing and understanding who your customers are. So this is the login screen for MDM Express. I'm just going to go ahead and put in my username and password. So when you sign into MDM Express, as I mentioned, there are a couple of themes here that really define what MDM Express is and, again, why we built it. And one of those is intuitiveness, right? So with intuitiveness, there's a really large thread there of simplicity, right, where we wanted users to come in and see that, hey, this is like no other MDM product ever used. It's simple. It's obvious as far as what I need to do and where I need to go. So the first screen that any user is going to see is this dashboard. And we've built this dashboard to really call out four major components. The first is being able to quickly understand what data we actually have in our MDM, either based on the number of records that we've brought in, right, so the actual data that exists, as well as the number of entities that are available. And think of entities as a master record. In addition to highlighting these high-level statistics, we also built this so that it mimics or is in line with the user's traditional workflow. Right? Everything that we want MDM Express to be needs to map back to what our users are doing. And that's thanks to a healthy dose of what's called design thinking here at IBM, where we've built out every single action so that it's in line with our users' natural work processes and it doesn't deviate from, again, how they approach work on a day-to-day basis. So, as I said, one of our goals is to enable the users in everything that they do, to make this easier for them. And the first piece or the first step is being able to enable users to add data to an MDM system and gain actionable business intelligence without the need for truly engaging IT as heavily as they would traditionally. So to start, of course, we're going to click on the bottom left-hand corner here. The first is upload data. So when I click on upload data, again, the next action I'm going to see is, well, what is the file that I want to bring into our system? There are two ways we can ingest data into MDM Express. The first is through a flat file that I'm going to go through here through our user interface. And the second is through actual API. So you can use API in the real-time integrations that we've built in to bring data into our system to match that data, etc. So when I click on upload data, I'm going to be able to select a specific file. In this case, I'm going to choose a CSV file. And I'm going to then name what's called our collection. So once I upload this file, it's going to create a specific collection in our system. And I'm going to name it and give it a description so that I can refer to it at a later point. So I'm going to call this banking customers. I'm going to add a quick description here. I'm going to then click on next. So when I click on next, the next component to this is really being able to map and define the data in the file to the model that we've built in MDM Express. And this model, if you didn't notice that in the last screen, is what's called a person data model. This person data model is what we're going to be able to use to define what a customer actually looks like. Being able to map the data from the file to our model is what's going to be key for the actual matching process. Dave talked about matching, of course, being a key component to mastering data. Without matching, you really can't do much. So being able to map these fields is typically a very time-consuming process, but again, through MDM Express, we've tried to make this as intuitive as possible. One of the major ways we've done that is by allowing customers to be presented with suggesting mapping attributes. So as you can see here, each of the columns, the 20 columns from my file, are automatically recognized. And for a majority of the files, we can actually leverage another technology in the product to suggest to our customers what we believe the particular value to be in that column. So in this case, let's say if I were to scroll down and see that the sample value from column 5 is male or female, then we suggest the suggested mapping attribute is gender. I can either select that to be yes, that's absolutely right, or I can go back into a model and I can choose any one of these other attributes that I think is more relevant. When I scroll down, if I see Kathy or JP, I can say that's either the legal name, given name, or let's say that's a nickname, given name. Either way, the process is going to be the same, where I'm going through and for each column I'm going to map that to what from our file to what we believe makes sense in the data model. So once you go through that process, the next natural step is clicking on Finish Collection. So for the purposes of our demonstration today, I'm not going to click on Finish Collection. And again, that's only because I've already actually gone through and uploaded some data here to make this as quick and seamless as possible. So when the file gets uploaded into MDM Express, we analyze that and we try to determine what each column in the file might be, and then we again start matching that to data that does or doesn't already exist within our system. So once everything looks good, I would have clicked on Finish again, and now what we're seeing is our Collections tab. So the Collections tab that we have here, again, these are literally collections of data, and there are different types of collections that we have. The first is the Upload collection. So this is the file that I went ahead and already uploaded. And the second is what's called the Match file, or the Match collection. The Match collection essentially is the data that has been matched or mastered based on what was already uploaded. So you can see here in this upload file, there are about 10,000 records or so, but in my match file, there are about 5,000 or almost 6,000 entities. I'm going to show you what that looks like, but as you can guess, what essentially happened was that from the 10,000 records, we were able to deduplicate that and create about almost 6,000 unique records, or rather 6,000 unique entities. So when I click into person, the next screen I get is this, right? So this is every entity that has been formed based on the data that I've ingested and the data that was matched. So if I were to type in, let's say, Julie Jackson, I know Julie Jackson is a pretty lifelong customer. She's based in Arizona, in Tucson, and I want to see, well, what data has come together to form Julie Jackson. At the left of each entity, you'll see a number, right? And this number is representative of the number of records that have been consolidated or brought together to create that particular entity. So when I expand Julie Jackson, you'll see 4 distinct records. You'll see Julie Jackson from a CRM. You'll see Jay Jackson from an ERP. You'll see, again, Julie Jackson from a CRM, and Jewel Jackson from, let's say, a Salesforce system. Now, again, this pretty much captures the essence of what master data management is all about, right? I have 4 different Julie Jacksons or variations of Julie sitting in 3 different systems. The address may or may not be the same. The telephone numbers may not be the same. The birth dates, the social security numbers, so on and so forth. Right? How can any banking institution look at this data without it having been mastered and say that these were really all the same person? Right? You can look at the address, or you can look at 1 or 2 other attributes, but this is a challenge that organizations face, and especially imagine having to do that at scale. Right? So this, in my mind, this is one of the easiest ways to look at why mastering data is so relevant and important, especially when it comes down to thinking about and focusing on who our customers are and being able to serve them appropriately. So this is Julie Jackson as an entity formed by 4 distinct records. I'm going to come back to Julie Jackson, but I just wanted to talk to you about what that person collection actually looked like. There's a third collection here, and that's what's called a search collection. A search collection is the ability to actually create a specific grouping of customers or records or entities based on very specific rules. So imagine you, again, as a bank, and you want to create a dedicated marketing campaign to all of your female customers who are living in the New York State area. Well, how do you do that? Well, thanks to our advanced search functionality, we can actually add very specific rules that allows us to set those attributes based on criteria that we deem relevant. So if I go down to primary residence, I'm going to choose primary residence state. I'm going to make that equal to New York, and when I click on save, what that's going to do is it's going to give me around 464 records for all of my customers that are currently living in New York. Well, that's awesome, but I said that I wanted to focus on all of my female customers that are living in New York. So I'm going to select gender. I'm going to make that equal to F. I'm going to click save, and now I'm seeing 177 records. So these are the female customers that are living in New York. And then I can click on create collection, and then creating this collection will allow me to create a unique description. Whoops. And then based on that unique description, I can refer back to this at a later point when myself or any one of my colleagues want to come in and actually refer to this specific set or subsection of my customers based on, again, my targeting marketing campaign, email blast, direct mailing campaign, etc. So that's what we're looking at when we think about the search collection and search functionality within MDM Express. And of course, we also have a simple search functionality as well, which I glossed over, but naturally I typed in Julie Jackson, if you remember from the example, and that brought back Julie Jackson. Typing in Julie will bring back any customer that has Julie, not only within the legal name field or wherever we see Julie relevant across the entire profile of that particular customer. So that's what we're looking at when we think about bringing data in, being able to manage or work with the data that we have, and being able to recognize what a mastered entity actually looks and feels like. Now, this is all to say I'm doing this within our user interface. And a bunch of you may have questions on, well, you know, we need our APIs, we need this data operationalized and flowing. Regardless of an operational or analytical use case, right? Everything that I'm showing you today can be done via our REST APIs that we have. And again, the more information you want to know about MDM Express, the more that we can share with you. Happy to share that documentation where appropriate. But again, as a reminder, everything that I'm showing you today and what I'm going to show you can be done through our APIs. So this brings up the next natural question, at least next natural question for me is, you know, mastering data is awesome, but a key component of mastering data is being able to add in context that myself or my organization will only know. Everything that mastering data represents is not only representative of automation of what a machine can do, but of what a human can add in as well, right? And that's where we have our lightweight stewardship functionality. And when we think about lightweight stewardship, again, the emphasis on lightweight from the perspective of I want to bring records or entities together that should be together, or I want to break things apart that shouldn't be together, or I want to be able to actually edit records or entities from within the user interface. So I want to show you each of those components right now when we think about data stewardship specifically. So again, let's say I'm a data analyst. I'm investigating some matches created by data that we recently added into our bank's MDM. So let's say, again, I'll do a simple text search, and for consistency, let's say we type in Julie Jackson again. So we type in Julie Jackson. That's going to bring back, again, Julie Jackson #1 and any other record or entity that has Julie or Jackson as part of it. So when I click into Julie Jackson, again, I know as a data analyst, let's say, who Julie Jackson is. But as I mentioned before, I have some context that the system or the computer will not and may not have, right? So when I expand Julie Jackson, my intuition tells me, or my gut tells me, that the third the third Julie Jackson actually has a different home telephone number. The birth date is the same, the address is the same, the name is the same, but for whatever reason, I have a feeling that this Julie Jackson, a really strong feeling that this Julie Jackson is not the same Julie Jackson as the other three. All right, and let's say I go and verify that with my other colleagues, and I come back and say, yep, in fact, this Julie Jackson should be its own or her own entity as opposed to being part of the originally mapped one. So what can I do here? What are my options? Well, on the left-hand side, when I click on these three little dots, I have a few options here. I can either delete Julie Jackson and say Julie Jackson doesn't exist for whatever reason. I can move Julie Jackson from this entity to another, or I could just say, hey, listen, Julie Jackson should be by herself. I'm going to unlink her completely. So I'm going to click on unlink. And what we've done here is we've created, again, make it as simple and easy as possible to our users. We've created this ability to actually preview what you're about to do and then what are the implications of doing this, right? So the preview is a new entity will be created for the record we've chosen to unlink, and then we can actually leave a descriptive reason for why we're doing this. And again, thinking back to how data stewards or analysts work with master data, there could be multiple users in your MDM making different changes, making or taking different actions. So being able to leave those descriptions and explaining why we're doing what we're doing is going to be pretty relevant. So I look at the action, I look at the preview of my action, I click on unlink, and by clicking unlink, what we've done now is you can see the original Julie Jackson that had or had 4, now has 3, and Julie Jackson with a 359 home telephone number is now Julie Jackson all by herself, right? So this is what actually happens when you unlink, or rather, when you unlink records from specific entities. And again, you can move these back together if you want to, or you can link records together and then actually look at what the implications are. The major takeaway here is that mastering data by itself, at least from an operational perspective, is not truly mastering data without being able to bring in that manual intervention of saying that data is or shouldn't be together or should be together, so on and so forth. All of this is relevant when we think about being able to steward the same data that we're mastering. And the final component, or the almost final, second to last component I want to talk about is when we think about managing consent for our users. So I'm sure that there are some of you listening today that are familiar with GDPR outside of the U.S., and within the U.S. we have CCPA that's going to be implemented pretty shortly here. And then who knows how many other policies are going to start popping up nationally that have. So the second to last component I want to show you here and talk about is consent management, or being able to manage consent for our users. So some of you who may be listening in today are familiar with, could be familiar with GDPR outside of the U.S. And within the U.S. we have CCPA, of course, in California, and potentially other policies that are going to start popping up across our country, where organizations need to start showing more responsibility for the data that they're managing, especially data for their customers, and banks are no exception. So understanding that, we've created a key piece of MDM Express to revolve around consent management model. And the reason for that is you cannot manage consent, users' ability or understanding what users opted into what or opted out from what communication, without having mastered those customers to begin with. In the example of Julie Jackson, if you thought these 4 or 3 Julie Jacksons were 3 or 4 distinct people, then the consent that you managed for each of those individuals would have been distinct in and of themselves, right? And we all know that if that was the case, then the implications of any communication in case Julie Jackson had opted out or asked not to be disturbed could have been very detrimental, right? So again, with that said, if I click into settings here and I click on consent model, this actually allows me to create first what's called a processing purpose. a processing purpose helps us as an organization and our customers understand how is our data or how is their data going to be used. So I'm going to start by creating a processing purpose here. I'm going to call it marketing analytics. And then I'm going to add a description. So I'm going to say customer data to be leveraged for marketing analytical purposes. And then I can create or add a specific language. Let's say English, because we could be collecting consent in multiple languages. And this is the script that I'd actually type in, or the words. Let's say if you had a customer service representative who was calling on customers and asking them about their consent or asking for consent, do you consent to this particular processing purpose? Of course, I'm sure you'd be a little more articulate than that, but either way, if I click on finish purpose, now you'll see that one processing purpose has been created. I can go back and view it. I can edit it accordingly. So now that that's been created, I'll go back to my master data catalog, and I'll click into, let's say, Julie Jackson again. And if I view on the details of Julie Jackson, I'll get, again, a pane with sort of the major details, anything from her contact info to identification, health card, SSN. But right at the top here, you'll see a section now that shows consent. And when I view and edit all consent, I can see what processing purpose have been created, marketing analytics. I'm going to edit that, and here I'm actually creating or setting whether or not the consent was withheld or whether the consent was given. So I can type in Julie Jackson name as the consent giver. I'm going to say consent was given. It was collected in English, and then I'm going to click on save. And then by clicking on save, now you'll see that Julie Jackson, as far as the entity has given one consent, and then that's actually ricocheted down or been pushed down to all of the Julie Jacksons, the records of Julie Jacksons that were formed together for that particular, came together for that particular entity. Again, very powerful and very important when we think about privacy policies from the perspective of being able to manage consent and then even being able to purge data from your systems. Mastering your customers is going to be a key step before you go ahead and even think about managing any type of consent data. And the very last component I want to talk about is how do we get data out of our system. We talked about bringing data in, getting data out, and there are really two ways. One, of course, is our API and all the REST APIs that we have. But then the second, again, is through our user interface. And through our user interface, when you click on whether it's the matched data, the original uploaded file, even the search collection that we created back at the beginning, this allows us to actually create a new export, and then once you create that export, you can download it and consume that data. I went ahead and already created an export about a little more than a month ago now, but when I click on that, that's actually going to bring the data into a CSV file for us to actually look at and view where necessary. So this wraps up our demonstration for IBM MDM Express. I hope everyone who is listening and watching can really see the benefits of what MDM Express could bring to your organization, especially when you think about a lightweight MDM product. So really excited to be talking to you about this, and Dave, I'll pass it back to you.
Thanks again, Jason. Really appreciate it, and hope that you'll all take an opportunity to come visit our website at www.lighthousecs.com, and feel free to give us a call at 401-334-0799. Really appreciate your time, and thank you, and have a great day.